The stars above Earth had always been beautiful. For thousands of years, humans looked up at the night sky and dreamed of what waited for them in the darkness between worlds. They built rockets. They colonized the Moon and Mars. They reached out to touch the universe with curious hands. But on this day, in the year 2347, those same stars became a nightmare. Admiral Woojin Lim stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Soul's Pride, and watched death approach. Through the massive viewing window, he could see them coming. Hundreds of alien warships emerged from hyperspace like demons crawling out of hell. Their hulls were black as midnight, covered in strange symbols that glowed with purple light. The Korath Empire had arrived. "Sir, enemy count confirmed," his tactical officer said. His voice shook with fear. 412 warships. 50 carrier class. The rest are destroyers and cruisers. Woojin closed his eyes for a moment. Earth's defense fleet had 83 ships. 83 against 400. He had known this day would come. The Korath Empire ruled most of the galaxy with an iron fist. They had demanded that humanity surrender and become slaves. Earth said no. Now, the Korath had come to teach humanity a lesson. "All ships, battle formation," Woojin commanded. His voice was calm. A commander must never show fear, even when facing certain death. Protect the orbital stations as long as possible. Give the civilians time to evacuate. The Terran defense fleet moved into position. These ships were the pride of humanity. Engineers had worked for decades to build them. Families had sacrificed everything to fund them. Young men and women had trained their whole lives to serve on them. And today, they would all die. The Korath did not wait. Purple beams of energy lanced across space. The first Terran ship, a destroyer named Braveheart, exploded in a ball of fire. Then another, and another. The Korath weapons were simply better. Their shields were stronger. Their ships were faster. Woojin watched his fleet die around him. He felt each explosion like a knife in his heart. Each ship was filled with sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, friends and lovers. Real people with real dreams. Now they were just dust floating in the void. "Return fire!" Woojin shouted. "Everything we have." The Terran ships fought back with desperate courage. Their missiles streaked toward the enemy. Their cannons blazed white-hot. They scored hits. They destroyed Korath ships. But for every enemy ship that fell, 10 Terran vessels were destroyed. On Earth below, billions of people watched the battle through telescopes and sensors. They saw the flashes of light in orbit. They knew what each flash meant. They held their children close and prayed to whatever gods they believed in. High Overlord Veth watched the battle from his command ship, the Eternal Darkness. He sat on a throne made of black metal, his 4 eyes blinking slowly. The Korath were tall creatures with gray skin and long arms. They had conquered 1,000 worlds. Earth would be 1,001. "Pathetic," Veth said. His voice was deep and rumbling. "These humans fight like insects. Brave, perhaps, but insects nonetheless." Admiral Sin stood beside his overlord. He was younger, more eager. "Should we end this quickly, my lord? Their fleet is almost gone." Veth smiled. It was an ugly thing, full of sharp teeth. "No, let them suffer. Let them hope. Then crush that hope completely. I want the galaxy to see what happens to those who defy us." Back on the Soul's Pride, fire and smoke filled the bridge. Woojin was bleeding from a wound on his forehead. Around him, his crew worked frantically to keep the damaged ship fighting. They had lost shields. They had lost half their weapons. But they were still alive. "Sir, only 12 ships remain," his officer reported. Tears ran down her face, but she kept working. "Orders?" Woojin looked at the view screen. The Korath fleet had barely been scratched. His 12 ships could not win. They could not even survive. But they could do one last thing. All remaining ships, Wujin said into the fleet communication channel. This is Admiral Lim. Form up on me. We're going to ram their command ship. There was silence. Then, one by one, voices responded. Soul's Hope, standing by. Bizen's Fury, with you, Admiral. Inchin's Light, ready to follow. 12 ships turned toward the eternal darkness. They pushed their engines to maximum. Alarms screamed as hulls cracked and systems failed. But they kept going. High Overlord Veth watched them come. For a moment, just a brief moment, something like respect flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone. Destroy them, he commanded. The Korath fleet opened fire. The Terran ships fell one after another. Soul's Hope was first, torn apart by concentrated fire. Bizen's Fury followed, spinning out of control before exploding. Inchin's Light managed to get closer before a direct hit to its reactor ended its journey. The Soul's Pride was the last ship standing. It was burning, dying, but still moving forward. Wujin stood at his command station, holding onto the railing as the ship shook around him. Almost there, he whispered. Just a little more. But they were too slow. A massive beam of purple energy struck the Soul's Pride directly in its center. The ship broke in half. Admiral Wujin Lim had just enough time to think of his family on Earth before everything went white. Then there was nothing. High Overlord Veth stood from his throne. Begin the broadcast, he commanded. Let the entire galaxy see. Minutes later, his image appeared on every communication channel in known space. Billions of beings on thousands of worlds watched as the Korath Overlord spoke. Citizens of the galaxy, Veth announced. Today, the species called humanity has been defeated. Their fleet is destroyed. Their planet is now under Korath control. They were warned. They were given a chance to submit peacefully. They chose to resist. This is the result. Behind him, the view screen showed Earth surrounded by the Korath Armada. Burning debris from the Terran fleet floated in orbit. Let this be a lesson to any who would defy the Korath Empire. Resistance is not brave. It is stupid. And it is punished. Across the galaxy, species that had considered rebellion watched in silence. They saw the mighty human fleet reduced to dust. They saw Earth helpless before the Korath guns. And they felt their hope die on a distant space station. Councilor Mira of the Valari Collective watched the broadcast with ancient eyes. The Valari were observers. They did not fight. They only watched and remembered. And Mira remembered something most had forgotten. Interesting, she said to herself. They show us their victory, but I wonder what they are not showing us. She had read the old reports about humanity. She knew their history. Humans were survivors. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars among themselves. They did not give up easily. Deep beneath the ice of Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, Admiral Taiho Kang opened his eyes. Alarms were flashing red. Screens showed the destruction of Earth's fleet. The death of Admiral Wujin Lim, his old friend. Taiho did not cry. He did not rage. He simply smiled. Phase 1 complete, he said quietly. They took the bait. Around him, the hidden facility was waking up. Lights flickered on. Engines began to hum. And in the darkness of the massive underground hangar, 200 warships waited in silence. The galaxy thought Earth was defeated. The galaxy was wrong. Admiral Taiho Kang walked through the corridors of the Europa facility with measured steps. The metal walls hummed with power. The air was cold but clean. All around him, men and women in uniform moved with quiet purpose. They had trained for this moment for 20 years. Some had trained their entire lives. The facility stretched for kilometers beneath the frozen surface of Jupiter's moon. It had taken 40 years to build. 40 years of secrecy. 40 years of lies told to the galaxy and even to most of Earth's own people. Only a handful knew the truth about what waited here in the darkness. Tejo entered the main hangar and stopped. Even after all these years, the sight took his breath away. 200 warships filled the massive cavern. They were beautiful in their deadliness. Sleek black hulls designed to absorb sensor scans. Weapon systems that had never been tested in real combat. Engines that could outrun anything the Korath possessed. This was the Judgment Fleet. This was humanity's true sword. "The Admiral on deck," a voice announced. Thousands of crew members stopped their work and stood at attention. Tejo looked at their faces. Young and old. Men and women. All of them had volunteered for this mission. All of them knew they might never see their families again. "At ease," Tejo said. "Continue preparations. We launch in 6 hours." He continued walking through the hangar until he reached the largest ship. The Eternal Dawn. It was the flagship of the fleet, twice the size of any other vessel. Its hull was painted with a single symbol, a rising sun emerging from darkness. Captain Una Park was waiting for him at the boarding ramp. She was young for a captain, only 34 years old, but her eyes held the weight of someone much older. She had been chosen for this command because she was the best tactical mind of her generation. "Admiral," she said, saluting. "The Eternal Dawn is ready. Walk with me, Captain." They entered the ship together. Inside, crew members rushed between stations, checking systems and loading supplies. The ship would carry 5,000 souls into battle. Each one had written letters to their loved ones. Letters that might never be sent. "I watched the broadcast," Una said quietly. "Admiral Wujin fought well. He did what was necessary," Tejo replied. "His sacrifice was part of the plan. He knew it. He accepted it. Did he know about us? About the fleet?" Tejo was silent for a moment. He knew there was a plan. He did not know the details. It was safer that way. If the Korath had captured him, they could not torture secrets out of him that he did not possess. They reached the bridge of the Eternal Dawn. It was a wide circular room filled with advanced displays and control stations. At the center stood the captain's chair, surrounded by tactical screens. Lieutenant Minho Beek was running flight simulations at one of the stations. He was the leader of the Ghost Wing, the elite fighter squadron that would fly with the fleet. His fingers danced across the controls as he destroyed virtual enemies. "Lieutenant," Una called. "Report." Minho jumped to his feet. "All fighter squadrons ready, Captain. 48 pilots. Best in the solar system." "They'll need to be," Tejo said. "The Korath have 3 times our numbers in fighters. Then we'll just have to be 3 times better, sir." Despite everything, Tejo smiled. This was the spirit that made humanity dangerous. Not their technology, not their numbers, their absolute refusal to accept that anything was impossible. Commander Jinho Seo entered the bridge carrying a datapad. He was the ship's tactical officer, a thin man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He had spent 10 years studying Korath battle tactics. He knew their weaknesses better than anyone alive. "Admiral, I have the final battle plan ready for review," Jinho said. Tejo nodded. They gathered around the central display as Jinho activated a holographic projection of the solar system. Earth appeared as a blue marble, surrounded by red dots representing the Korath fleet. "The Korath have positioned 400 ships in orbit around Earth," Jinho explained. "They believe the battle is over. They have begun landing ground forces on 6 continents. Their guard is down." "Their weakness?" Tejo asked. "Arrogance," Jinho replied. "They spread their fleet too thin. They want to show off their power by covering the entire planet. If we strike fast and hard, We can break their formation before they can regroup. Eunice studied the display. Our ships are better. Our weapons are better. But 400 against 200 are still bad odds. Which is why we won't fight fair, Jinho said. He pressed a button, and the display changed. We exit hyperspace here, in the shadow of the moon. This gives us 30 seconds before their sensors can detect us. In those 30 seconds, we unleash everything we have on their command ships. Cut off the head? Taiho said. The body will thrash around in confusion. Exactly. The Korath are used to fighting species that hesitate, that try to negotiate. We will not hesitate. We will not negotiate. We will simply destroy. Dr. Hana Choi entered the bridge. She was older than the others, with gray in her hair and wrinkles around her eyes. But her mind was sharper than anyone's. She had designed the weapons that the Judgment Fleet carried. The pulse cannons are charged and ready, she reported. 20 years of work finally put to use. Taiho looked at her. You started this, Hana, back when everyone thought you were crazy. She laughed softly. I was young and angry. I saw how the galaxy looked at us. Like we were children playing with toys. I knew that one day someone would come to take those toys away. And you prepared. We all prepared. Every engineer who worked in secret. Every soldier who trained in hidden facilities. Every leader who kept a secret. We all knew this day would come. Taiho turned to face everyone on the bridge. Word had spread, and officers from other stations had gathered to listen. He saw fear in some eyes, determination in others, hope in all of them. 20 years ago, he began. The United Earth Council made a decision. They looked at the galaxy and saw that we were surrounded by empires that saw us as weak, as prey. They knew that one day someone would attack us. And they knew that if we showed our true strength, others would attack first, before we were ready. He paused, letting the words sink in. So we built 2 fleets. One fleet was visible. It was strong enough to defend against small threats. Strong enough to make us look like we were trying. But weak enough to lose against a major empire. A decoy, Minho said. Yes, a sacrifice. Admiral Wujin Lim and every person who died today knew their role. They fought and died to make the Korath believe they had won. To make the galaxy believe humanity was finished. Taiho walked to the main view screen. Outside, the other ships of the Judgment Fleet were powering up. Lights flickered on across their hulls. Engines began to glow. But we are not finished. We are just beginning. The Korath think they have conquered Earth. They are celebrating their victory right now. They are dividing up our planet like a prize. They have no idea what is coming for them. He turned back to face his people. In 6 hours, we will exit hyperspace above Earth. We will show the galaxy what human defeat really looks like. And I promise you this. The Korath will learn that there is nothing more dangerous than a human who has nothing left to lose. The bridge erupted in cheers. Officers shouted and embraced each other. For a moment, the fear was gone, replaced by something fiercer. Something more primal. Yuna watched them with quiet pride. Then she noticed Taiho standing alone, looking at a small photograph in his hand. Sir? She asked softly. Are you all right? Taiho looked at the photo. It showed a young woman holding a baby. His daughter. His granddaughter. They were on Earth right now, hiding in an underground shelter, waiting to see if their world would survive. I'm fine, Captain, he said. I'm just remembering why we fight. He tucked the photo into his uniform and straightened his shoulders. All ships, he announced over the fleet communication channel. This is Admiral Kal. Begin launch sequence. We have an appointment with Destiny. Let's not be late. One by one, the warships of the Judgment Fleet rose from their hiding places. They emerged from Europa, from Titan, from Ganymede, from asteroids that had been hollowed out and turned into secret bases. They gathered in the shadow of Saturn's rings, a fleet of ghosts preparing to haunt the living. And across the solar system, the Korath celebrated their victory, completely unaware that death was coming for them. Admiral Sin raised his glass of victory wine and smiled at the officers gathered in his banquet hall. The room was decorated with trophies from 100 conquered worlds, weapons, flags, skulls. Each one represented a species that had dared to resist the Korath Empire. A toast, Sin announced, to the fall of Earth, to the glory of the Empire, and to the look on those human faces when they realized they never had a chance. The officers laughed and drank. They were already dividing Earth among themselves. Who would rule which continent? Who would control the mineral rights? Who would have first pick of human slaves? The humans fought harder than expected, one officer admitted. That last charge was almost impressive. Almost, Sin agreed. But courage without power is just stupidity. They threw themselves against our shields like waves against a rock. And like waves, they broke. A junior officer approached nervously. Admiral, Warlord Dren reports success on the ground. 6 major cities have been captured. Human resistance is minimal. Of course it is. Their spirit is broken. Sin took another drink. Within a month, they will accept their place as servants of the Empire. Within a year, they will thank us for bringing order to their chaos. The celebration continued. Music played. Food was served. The Korath officers enjoyed themselves without a single worry. Far away, beyond the moon, 200 Terran warships waited in the darkness of space. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Captain Yuna Park watched the final countdown on her display. All ships report ready, Captain, Commander Jinho Seo announced. Weapons charged. Shields at full power. Crews at battle stations. Yuna nodded. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady. She had trained for this moment since she was 16 years old. Her father had been one of the engineers who built this ship. He died 3 years ago, never seeing his work completed. Today, Father, she whispered. Today we show them what you built. Admiral Taiho Kang's voice came over the fleet channel. All ships, this is Admiral Kang. We enter hyperspace in 60 seconds. Remember your training. Remember your purpose. Remember everyone who sacrificed so we could be here. Lieutenant Minho Beek sat in the cockpit of his fighter, the lead craft of Ghost Wing. Around him, 47 other pilots were making final checks. They were the best. They had to be. Ghost Wing, sound off, he commanded. One by one, his pilots reported ready. Their voices were calm and professional. But Minho knew they were scared. He was scared too. Only fools felt no fear before battle. Listen up, Minho said. Our job is simple. Get in fast. Hit their carriers. Get out alive if possible. If not possible, make sure you take some of them with you. Copy that lead, his wingman responded. Let's make them regret coming to our solar system. The countdown reached 0. Space, twisted around the Judgment Fleet as they entered hyperspace. The journey took only seconds, but it felt like forever. Then they emerged, and Earth filled their view screens. The blue planet was surrounded by enemy ships. 400 Korath vessels in loose formation, their weapons cold, their shields at minimum power. They were not expecting trouble. Why would they? The war was over. 30 seconds to detection, Jinho reported. All ships, acquire targets. On the Eternal Dawn, weapons officers locked onto the largest Korath ships. The pulse cannons hummed with deadly energy. Dr. Hana Choi had designed them specifically to defeat Korath shields. 20 years of research. 20 years of testing. Now they would find out if her work was worth it. 20 seconds, Jinho counted. 15, 10. On Admiral Sin's ship, a sensor officer suddenly looked up from his console. His face went pale. "Admiral," he said, "we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures. Large signatures. Very large." Sin frowned. "From where? The inner system?" "No, sir. From behind the moon. They just appeared. 200... No. Wait. Admiral, there are 200 warships heading directly toward us." The room went silent. Officers stopped eating. Glasses froze halfway to mouths. "That's impossible," Sin said slowly. "We destroyed their fleet. We watched them die. Sir, these are different ships. Bigger. More heavily armed. Their energy signatures are off the charts." Sin ran to the sensor station and pushed the officer aside. He stared at the display, his 4 eyes widening with disbelief. "Sound battle stations," he ordered. "All ships. Raise shields and—" He never finished the sentence. Captain Una Park's voice echoed through every Korath communication channel. It was calm, cold, absolutely without mercy. "This is the Terran Judgment Fleet. You have 10 seconds to pray to your gods." Then the Terran ships opened fire. 200 pulse cannons fired at once. The beams were white, pure, and blinding. They struck the Korath fleet like the fist of an angry god. Dr. Hannah Choi had done her job well. The Korath shields, which had seemed invincible against the first Terran fleet, shattered like glass before the pulse weapons. Ships that had laughed at human missiles now came apart under the concentrated fire. 30 Korath vessels exploded in the first 3 seconds. Their crews never even knew what hit them. "First wave successful," Jinho reported. "Enemy formation breaking apart. They're panicking." "Good," Una said. "Let's keep them panicking. All ships, advance. Ghost Wing, launch." Minho Beak and his fighters roared out of the Eternal Dawn's hangars. They were small compared to the massive warships, but they were fast and deadly. They wove through the chaos, targeting the weak points of enemy ships. "Ghost Wing on me," Minho called. "We're going for their carriers." The Korath carriers were huge vessels that held hundreds of their own fighters. If those fighters launched, the battle would become much more complicated. Minho intended to make sure they never got the chance. His squadron dove toward the nearest carrier. Korath point defense guns tried to track them, but the Terran fighters were too fast, too unpredictable. Minho fired his missiles at point-blank range, right into the carrier's hangar bay. The explosion was enormous. Secondary blasts rippled through the ship as fuel and ammunition cooked off. The carrier broke in half and began to drift. "One down," Minho called. Moving to the next. Admiral Sin finally reached his command center. Alarms were screaming. Officers were shouting. Everywhere he looked, he saw death and destruction. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Where did these ships come from?" "Unknown, Admiral. Our intelligence said nothing about a second fleet." "Obviously our intelligence was wrong." Sin slammed his fist on a console. "Order all ships to concentrate fire on their flagship. Destroy their leader and the rest will fall." The Korath ships tried to regroup. They turned their weapons toward the Eternal Dawn and opened fire. Purple beams streaked through space, but the Eternal Dawn was not like the ships they had fought before. Its shields held. Its hull absorbed impacts that would have destroyed any other vessel. And its weapons fired back with devastating precision. "Shields at 80%, Jinho reported. "Minor damage to sections 7 and 12. "Acceptable," Una said. "Continue advance. I want us in the center of their formation." "Captain, that's suicide. We'll be surrounded." Una smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "That's exactly what I want. They can't fire at us without risking hitting each other. And at close range, our weapons are even more effective." The Eternal Dawn pushed forward. Other Terran ships followed, forming a wedge that drove into the heart of the Korath fleet. It was an insane tactic. It went against every rule of space combat, and it was working. The Korath ships could not coordinate their fire. They shot at the Terran vessels and hit their own allies. Their formations fell apart as captains made individual decisions, some trying to flee, others trying to fight. Admiral Taiho Kang watched the battle from his position at the rear of the fleet. He saw the chaos among the enemy. He saw the burning wrecks of Korath ships. And he knew that this was only the beginning. "Send a message to High Overlord Veth," he commanded. "Tell him that Earth sends its regards." Far away, on the Korath homeworld, High Overlord Veth received the transmission. He watched the battle footage with growing horror. His undefeatable fleet was being torn apart. His invincible warriors were dying. How? He whispered, "We watched them die. We declared victory. How is this happening?" No one answered. No one could. Back in Earth's orbit, Minho Peak had lost 12 of his pilots. 12 friends. 12 heroes. But they had destroyed 5 carriers and countless fighters. The Korath air power was crippled. "Ghostwing, regroup on me," he ordered. His voice was hoarse. His fighter was damaged. But he was still flying. "We're not done yet." Captain Yuna Park stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn as enemy fire lit up the void around her. She thought of her father. She thought of Admiral Wujin Lim and all the others who had died to make this moment possible. "For Earth," she said quietly. "For everyone we lost." Then she gave the order that would decide the fate of the battle. "All ships, target their command vessel. Admiral Sin dies tonight." The Terran fleet turned as one toward the enemy flagship. And Admiral Sin, watching them come, finally understood the truth. Earth had never been defeated. Earth had been waiting. The space above Earth had become a graveyard. Burning ships tumbled through the void. Debris clouds spread like blood in water. Escape pods launched from dying vessels, both human and Korath. Their occupants praying they would survive long enough to be rescued. Captain Yuna Park gripped the arms of her command chair as the Eternal Dawn shook from another impact. 3 Korath destroyers had focused their fire on the flagship. The shields were holding, but just barely. "Shields at 40%, Commander Jinho Seo reported. "Hull breaches on decks 12 through 15. Casualty reports coming in. How many?" Yuna asked. Jinho paused. 237 dead. 400 wounded. Yuna closed her eyes for a moment. 237 souls. Families who would receive terrible news. Children who would grow up without parents. But she could not think about that now. The battle was not over. "Continue the attack," she ordered. "Get me a targeting solution on Sin's flagship." Admiral Sin was desperate. His once mighty fleet was falling apart around him. Ships that had conquered 100 worlds were burning. Officers who had laughed at humanity were screaming as their vessels came apart. "All ships, fall back to defensive positions." Sin screamed into his communicator. "Protect the command ship." But his orders came too late. The Korath fleet was in chaos. Captains were making their own decisions, some fleeing toward open space, others fighting to the death. The discipline that had made them unstoppable was gone, on the surface of Earth. The battle was even more brutal. Sergeant Nari Huang led her Marines through the burning streets of Seoul. The Korath had landed ground troops before the space battle began, occupying major cities and establishing control points. Now, with the fleet above in chaos, the human resistance was rising. Nari was 32 years old. She had joined the Marines at 18, following in the footsteps of her grandmother, who had fought in the last great war on Earth. She had trained for 15 years in secret facilities, preparing for the day when aliens would invade. That day had come. "Move up," she commanded. "Stay low. Use the buildings for cover." Her squad advanced through the ruins. Somewhere ahead, Korath soldiers were holding a government building. Inside were hostages, human civilians the aliens had captured to use as shields. A Korath patrol appeared around a corner. 6 tall gray aliens carrying plasma rifles. They saw the humans and raised their weapons. Nari was faster. She fired 3 times, dropping 2 of them before they could shoot. Her squad opened up, cutting down the rest in seconds. "Keep moving," she ordered. "We don't stop until those hostages are free." They reached the government building. Korath soldiers were visible in the windows, watching for attackers. Nari studied the situation carefully. "Jay, take your team around the back. Wait for my signal." "Yes, Sergeant." Nari led the rest of her squad to the front entrance. The Korath had barricaded the doors, but that would not stop them. She pulled out a breaching charge and placed it against the barrier. 3, 2, 1. Breach. The explosion blew the doors inward. Nari was the first through, her rifle blazing. Korath soldiers scattered, caught off guard by the sudden assault. "Go! Go! Go!" The Marines poured into the building. Room by room, floor by floor, they cleared out the enemy. The Korath fought hard, but they were not prepared for the ferocity of human close combat. Nari kicked open a door and found herself face to face with a Korath officer. He was huge, almost 3 meters tall, and he held a blade in his hand. "Human filth," he snarled. "I will enjoy killing you slowly." Nari dropped her rifle and drew her own blade. "Come try." They clashed in the center of the room. The Korath was stronger, but Nari was faster. She dodged his strikes and countered with precision cuts. Within seconds, she had opened wounds on his arms and chest. "Impossible," he gasped. "You're just a—" Nari drove her blade through his throat. "Just a human. And don't you forget it." In space, the tide was turning decisively against the Korath. Admiral Taiho Kang watched the battle from his position at the rear of the fleet. The Judgment Fleet had lost 60 ships, but they had destroyed over 200 Korath vessels. The enemy was broken. "Admiral," a communications officer reported. "Captain Park is requesting permission to execute the final assault." Taiho nodded. "Permission granted. Tell her to end this." The Eternal Dawn and 3 sister ships broke from the main battle and headed directly for Admiral Sin's flagship. The other Korath ships tried to stop them, but the Terran vessels pushed through with brutal efficiency. "Target their bridge," Yuna commanded. "I want Sin dead." "Captain, we're taking heavy fire. Shields at 20%. "I don't care. Keep firing." The 4 Terran ships concentrated their pulse cannons on the enemy flagship. The beams tore through weakened shields and punched into the hull. Explosions rippled across the massive vessel. On his bridge, Admiral Sin watched his ship die around him. Fires burned everywhere. Officers lay dead at their stations. The view screen showed the Terran ships approaching, relentless and unstoppable. "No," he whispered. "This cannot be. We are the Korath. We do not lose." A final blast struck the command center. Admiral Sin had just enough time to scream before everything went white. His flagship exploded in a ball of fire visible from Earth's surface. "Target destroyed," Jinho reported. "Admiral Sin is dead." Across the battle, the surviving Korath ships saw their command vessel die. Whatever fight remained in them vanished. They began to flee, pushing their engines to maximum, desperate to escape the killing field. "Admiral Kang," Yuna said over the fleet channel. "The enemy is retreating. What are your orders?" There was a moment of silence. Then Taiho's voice came through, cold and final. "No survivors." The Terran fleet pursued the fleeing Korath with ruthless efficiency. Ships that tried to surrender were destroyed. Ships that tried to fight were destroyed. Ships that tried to run were run down and destroyed. Far across the galaxy, Counselor Mira of the Valari Collective watched the battle footage in silence. Her people had been observers for 10,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had seen countless species fight and die. But she had never seen anything like this. "The humans," she said to her aides. "They are not just winning. They are annihilating. Should we be concerned, Counselor?" Myra considered the question. "Perhaps. But for now, let us simply watch. And remember, the galaxy has just changed forever." On the Korath home world, High Overlord Veth received the final reports. His invasion fleet was destroyed. Admiral Sin was dead. The ground forces on Earth were being wiped out. How many ships escaped? He demanded. 43, my lord. Out of 400. Veth slumped on his throne. In a single day, he had lost the greatest military force the Empire had ever assembled. He had lost his best admiral. He had lost his reputation as an unstoppable conqueror. And worst of all, he had awakened something terrible. "The humans," he said. "We made a mistake. We should have left them alone. My lord, what do we do now?" Veth looked at the burning images of his fleet. He thought about the message the humans had sent. "Earth sends its regards. We prepare," he said, "because I do not think they are finished with us." Back in Earth's orbit, the battle was finally over. The last Korath ship had been destroyed. The skies were clear, except for debris, and the victorious Terran fleet. Captain Una Park stood on the bridge of the damaged Eternal Dawn. Around her, crew members were celebrating. Some were crying. Some were hugging each other. Some just stared at the view screen in disbelief. They had won. "Casualty report," Una requested quietly. Jinho checked his data. "Fleet-wide, we lost 118 ships. Approximately 45,000 personnel. Ground casualties still being counted, but estimated at 2 million civilians and 50,000 military." Una felt the weight of those numbers settle on her shoulders. So many dead. So many families destroyed. Victory had come at a terrible price. "But we won," she said. It was not a celebration. It was a statement of fact. "We won, Captain." Admiral Taiho Kang's voice came over the fleet channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Kang. The battle is over. Earth is free. Stand down from battle stations." Then, after a pause, he continued. "To every man and woman who fought today, I say thank you. To every soul we lost, I say we will never forget. And to the galaxy that watched us burn and did nothing, I say remember this day. Remember what humanity is capable of. And never threaten us again." On Earth's surface, Sergeant Nari Huang emerged from the government building with the freed hostages. The sun was rising over Seoul. The Korath were dead or captured. The streets were still burning, but they were free. She looked up at the sky and saw the flashes of light in orbit. She knew what they meant. "We won," she said to herself. Then, louder, for everyone to hear, "We won." The cry was taken up by her Marines, then by the hostages, then by people emerging from shelters all across the city, all across the world. For the first time in human history, an alien empire had attacked Earth. And for the first time in galactic history, an alien empire had lost. The morning sun rose over a changed world. Smoke still drifted from burning cities. Debris from the space battle fell through the atmosphere like shooting stars. But for the first time in days, the people of Earth could look up at the sky without fear. Captain Una Park stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Dawn. The ship was badly damaged, barely holding together. 1/3 of its crew was dead or wounded, but it was still flying, still fighting. Below her, Earth turned slowly. She could see the scars of battle. the blackened spots where Korath weapons had struck, the ruins of cities that had been occupied. So much destruction, so much death, but also so much life. People were emerging from shelters. Rescue teams were searching for survivors. Hospitals were treating the wounded. Humanity was picking itself up and starting to rebuild, just as it always had. "Captain?" A voice came from behind her. It was Lieutenant Minho Beak. He looked exhausted. His flight suit was stained with sweat and blood. He had lost half his squadron in the battle. "Minho," Yuna said, "how are you holding up?" "I'm alive," he replied, "which is more than I can say for 12 of my pilots." Yuna put a hand on his shoulder. "They died heroes. Their names will be remembered forever. Will that bring them back? No, nothing will bring them back. But their sacrifice meant something. Because of them, billions of people are still alive." Minho nodded slowly. He understood. In war, sacrifice was always necessary. The question was whether it was worth it. Today, it had been Dr. Hannah Choi found them there an hour later. She was carrying a data pad, reviewing the performance of her weapon systems. "The pulse cannons exceeded expectations," she reported. 93% effectiveness against Korath shields. "The modifications I made last year proved crucial. Your weapons won this war," Yuna said. Hannah shook her head. "My weapons helped, but they didn't win the war. People won the war. Courage won the war. The refusal to give up won the war." They stood together in silence, watching their wounded planet heal. Admiral Taiho Kang summoned the fleet commanders to a conference on the Eternal Dawn. They gathered in the damaged briefing room, surrounded by cracked walls and flickering lights. "The immediate threat is over," Taiho began. "The Korath invasion fleet has been destroyed. Ground forces have been eliminated or captured. Earth is secure. What about the Korath Empire?" Commander Jinho Seo asked. "They still have more ships, more soldiers. They could launch another invasion. They could, but they won't, at least not soon." Taiho pulled up a display showing galactic intelligence reports. "Our sources indicate that the Korath home world is in chaos. High Overlord Veth's authority has collapsed. Several generals are fighting for control. They have bigger problems than us right now. So we have time to rebuild," Yuna said. "Yes, time to rebuild. Time to prepare. Time to make sure this never happens again." The meeting continued for hours, discussing logistics and strategy. But everyone knew the real conversation would happen later. When the galaxy was listening, 1 week after the battle, Admiral Taiho Kang addressed the galaxy. His face appeared on every communication channel in known space. Billions of beings on thousands of worlds watched as the human leader spoke. "Citizens of the galaxy," Taiho began. His voice was calm but carried weight. "1 week ago, the Korath Empire attacked Earth. They came with 400 warships. They expected an easy victory. They expected us to kneel." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "We did not kneel. We fought, and we won." Images appeared on the screen. The destroyed Korath fleet, the burning wrecks of enemy ships, the victorious Terran vessels. For centuries, the galaxy has looked at humanity and seen a weak species, a primitive species, a species not worth respecting. The Korath believed this. They believed they could crush us like insects. Taiho's expression hardened. They were wrong, and every species that shares that belief is also wrong. He leaned forward, staring directly into the camera. Earth was not defeated. Earth was never in danger of being defeated. What you saw in our first battle was a performance, a deception. We allowed the Korath to believe they had won because we wanted them to lower their guard. And when they did, we destroyed them. Across the galaxy, Leaders of 100 species watched with new eyes. They saw not a weak humanity, but a cunning one, a patient one, a dangerous one. To the Korath Empire, I say this: your invasion has failed. Your fleet is ash. Your soldiers are prisoners or corpses. If you are wise, you will never threaten Earth again. Taiho stood straighter. To every other empire that has considered attacking humanity, I say this: we remember. We remember every species that watched us burn and did nothing. We remember every empire that laughed at our weakness. We remember, and we do not forget. His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. Come for us if you dare. Attack our world if you think you can win. But know this: we have been preparing for this day for 40 years. We have ships you have never seen, weapons you cannot imagine, and we have something no other species in this galaxy possesses. He smiled, and it was not a kind smile. We have patience. We have endurance. We have the will to sacrifice everything for victory. So think carefully before you make us your enemy, because once we decide you are a threat, we will not stop until that threat is eliminated, completely, permanently. The transmission ended. Silence fell across the galaxy. On the Korath homeworld, High Overlord Veth watched the broadcast from his heavily guarded palace. His hands were shaking. We made a terrible mistake, he said to no one in particular. 3 days later, he was dead, killed by his own generals, who blamed him for the disaster. The Korath Empire fell into civil war, too busy fighting itself to threaten anyone else. 1 month after the battle, Councilor Mira of the Valari Collective visited Earth. She was the first alien dignitary to do so since the invasion. Admiral Una Park, newly promoted, met her at the landing site. The two leaders walked through a garden that had somehow survived the battle, surrounded by blooming flowers and singing birds. Your world is beautiful, Myra said, even after all the destruction. We rebuild, Una replied. It's what we do. I have studied your species for many years, Admiral. I thought I understood you. Now I realize I understood nothing. Una smiled. We're complicated. You hid an entire fleet. For decades. You sacrificed thousands of your own people just to create a deception. You fought with a ferocity I have never witnessed. Myra looked at Una with ancient, curious eyes. How did you endure? How did you hide such strength and let yourselves appear weak? Una was silent for a moment. She thought of her father, who died building ships he would never see fly. She thought of Admiral Wujin Lim, who flew to his death knowing it was part of the plan. She thought of all the people who had sacrificed so that humanity could survive. Because we are human, she said finally. We learned patience from our ancestors. They survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They learned that sometimes you have to wait. Sometimes you have to appear weak while you grow strong. Sometimes you have to let your enemies think they have won. She looked up at the sky, where the stars waited. And we never forget. Every wrong done to us is remembered. Every debt is eventually paid. Myra nodded slowly. I think the galaxy will learn to respect that. I hope so, Una said, because we would rather be friends than enemies. But we are very, very good at being enemies. 6 months later, Earth had largely recovered. New ships were being built. New defenses were being installed. The Judgment Fleet was being expanded, no longer hidden but proudly displayed. Lieutenant Minho Beek, now captain, trained the next generation of pilots. He told them stories of Ghostwing, of the friends he had lost and the battles they had won. He made sure they understood what it meant to be defenders of Earth. Dr. Hana Choi continued her research, developing even more powerful weapons. She worked with young engineers who had grown up hearing stories of her genius. She told them that science was humanity's greatest weapon, and they believed her. Sergeant Nari Wang, now Major, was stationed in Seoul. The city had been rebuilt, stronger than before. She planted a tree in the central plaza, a memorial to everyone who had died in the battle. Every year, on the anniversary, she returned to water it. Admiral Taiho Kang retired quietly. He had done what was necessary. He had led humanity through its darkest hour and into a new age. Now it was time for younger leaders to take over. On his last day, he visited the memorial that had been built for Admiral Woojin Lim and the crews of the decoy fleet. Thousands of names were carved into black stone, each one a hero who had died so that others could live. "Thank you," Taiho whispered. "We could not have won without you." Then he went home to his family. Finally at peace, Admiral Unipark stood on the bridge of the new flagship. The rising sun. It was bigger than the eternal dawn, stronger, more powerful. Behind it, a fleet of 300 warships waited in formation. She looked out at the stars and thought about the future. Humanity was no longer a young species, stumbling through a dangerous galaxy. They were players now, powers, forces to be respected and feared. Other empires were already sending diplomats, eager to make alliances. Species that had ignored humanity now wanted to be friends. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had changed it, but Yuna knew the truth. This was just the beginning.